Nintendo is pulling the plug on 3DS online services, the only exception being made for Pokemon transferring through Poketransporter and Pokemon Bank. However, the Pokemon Company still warned us to transfer our Pokemon now in case it shuts down later. But if Pokemon Bank and Transporter do shut down, they'll be taking away some of the easiest or only ways to get certain shiny Pokemon. So I wanted to get them before it's too late. And we're going to get them in the fastest ways possible. For this video, we're traveling all the way back to the Generation 1 Pokemon games, which if you've played or watched extensively, you'd know that shiny Pokemon don't exist in Gen 1, but they also kinda do. Schrodinger's shinies, if you will. While you will never see a Pokemon be shiny in a Generation 1 game, if you transport a Pokemon to a future game, it has the chance to be shiny. It can be shiny whether you transferred it to the Generation 2 cartridges or use the Poketransporter for the 3DS Virtual Console. Lying within this possibility, we have one of the only ways to get a particular shiny Pokemon: Mew. While Event Mew is one of the most common event Pokemon ever, shiny Mew events have been very uncommon. They kept it rather exclusive the past 25 years so that one day they could paywall it in Pokemon Go. And while we can cheat a shiny Mew into our older games, Game Freak doesn't like hacked Pokemon and have historically taken measures to give hackers a hard time. If you used Action Replay heavily in Gens 3 and 4, you were quite prone to getting bad eggs, corrupted Pokemon data that could destroy your save files. And I remember in Gen 4 not being able to use my hacked shiny legendaries against my friends in battles. And they still don't like hacked Pokemon today. Pokemon Home has hack checks, and while it's unlikely, you might get caught for it and banned from the service and Nintendo Online Play as a whole. So provided we don't have a time machine to get one from the past events, if we want a shiny Mew, there exist only two options. Number one is tricking our Emerald version into letting us encounter Mew, then either shiny hunt it or RNG manipulate it, but another method exists in Generation 1, which will be a much faster transfer process, and this can be done with the power of the 8F glitch. Like many older games, the Generation 1 Pokemon games are quite broken and barely functional. And that's all it took to entertain an entire generation of children. And all the way back in 2002, players had found a way to abuse these broken games to get a Mew on their save file. Meanwhile, I was in preschool and didn't even know what a Pokemon was yet. And you can get Mew quite early into the game before even battling the second gym. Step 1, get to Cerulean City. Step 2, catch an Abra. Step 3, walk in front of this guy and frame perfectly press start and teleport away. Step 4, battle one of these trainers. Step 5, go back to the start of the route that this guy was on, and bam, you've encountered a Mew. Bonus points if you use Growl on the trainer's last Pokemon 6 times to make the Mew level 1. Extra bonus points if you then gain a small amount of experience to initiate a level underflow glitch to make it level 100. But this Mew has a fundamental problem. It's not legit enough. It'll be considered a cheated Pokemon in hack checks, because by normal game standards, Mew should be an unobtainable Pokemon. But there is a particular Generation 1 Mew that will be able to bypass these hack checks. Its OT has to be GF with the ID number 22796. It's so close to being nice. But this is where the 8F glitch comes in. Through the power of item storage underflow and literal demon magic, we can obtain the item 8F. Not to be confused with 4F, 9F, or 10F, which you might find if you mess the glitch up. The item 8F allows us to run arbitrary code execution, which as long as you find a setup for it, you can do basically anything you want to in the game. And we can use this to edit Mew, both to make it a quote legitimate GF Mew, and to make it shiny. If you want to try out this process of getting the shiny Mew for yourself, I'd recommend Austin John Play's video guide on the subject, with one note about it. Don't wait as long as he did to attempt cloning your Mew, because you might corrupt your save file 7 hours into the process and have to start over. And then you might try to clone it when you get to Mew 2 hours in and corrupt your save file again and have to start over again. So maybe just don't clone the Mews. You can get as many Mews as you want by encountering a Ditto and having it transform into one of your Pokemon that has a special stat of 21. I followed this whole process a few months ago, getting myself 7 shiny Mews, one of which happened to become 6 IV on the transfer. Pretty neat. And then I did the Mewtwo event raid with them in Scarlet and Violet to give them the Mighty Mark. But seeing as this is a pretty convoluted setup that probably will take about 8 hours, all for this one shiny Pokemon, while you're at it, why not just go ahead and get the other legendary Pokemon from Gen 1 and make them shiny too? Step 1, catch the legendaries, which when I first started doing this video, I had 4 badges. Step 0.5, beat the game. Step 1, catch all the legendaries. Step 2, get all the items you need for the glitch again, or just do all the other legendaries at the same time as Mew. Step 3, use 8F on each of the legendaries with 178x accuracy. And step 4, use 8F on each of them with 177x accuracy. And bada bing bada boom, you've got all of the Kanto legendary Pokemon shiny. And these guys don't need any special tinkering to make them legitimate, you can just beam them up. That's probably too old of a reference these days, huh? I'd say this method is the fastest way to get every Gen 1 shiny legendary. Maybe RNG manipulation could be faster if you already have an established save file on Fire Red and Leaf Green and Emerald. Perhaps Blissey or Hefe could try to speedrun it and finish in under 10 hours. Gen 3 or perhaps Gen 4 RNG manip might be good enough for that. But while you have the choice of getting Shiny Mew in either Gen 1 or Gen 3 with Emerald, Shiny Celebi is a different story. To this day, the only method of being able to obtain an English Shiny Celebi is with the Pokemon Crystal Virtual Console game. But if you're trying to get it quickly, there's one problem with that. Nobody's really figured out how to RNG manipulate it. I stumbled across an old Reddit thread that says Gen 2 RNG manipulation is definitely possible, but Shiny Celebi is pretty much the only reason to do it. There is RNG manipulation in the speedrun of the game, but they would prefer to not run into shiny Pokemon because the animation costs time, so they probably didn't research on how to get shinies that much. And most people looking for Shiny Celebi are satisfied just being able to hunt it regularly or use a bot program to do the work for them. On top of people not caring to find out an RNG setup to make it shiny, once it is shiny and you transfer it, it's going to have 5 perfect IVs. And IVs are one of the other main reasons to RNG manipulate. So what was I going to do? Was I going to spend some of the valuable time that we can still transfer old Pokemon doing this shiny hunt legitimately, perhaps even for months? Or assemble an Avengers of sorts to get a replicable RNG manipulation setup for Celebi? Or was there going to be some sort of easier way? You see, while the Gen 2 games are slightly less broken than Gen 1, there's still a major exploit that breaks them wide open. Introducing the coin case glitch in Pokemon Gold and Silver. There was a translation bug with the coin case where using it jumps to the RAM segment pertaining to storing Pokemon Cry data. And depending on what Pokemon's Cry you listen to, you can do a bunch of interesting glitches with it. But this is our pathway to arbitrary code execution like we had with the 8F glitch, but arguably it's even easier to pull off. You basically just need to get to Goldenrod City and I haven't played the game yet. So now this video's a Pokemon Gold Let's Play. Picked Totodile, named him Bart. Decided to continue to name all of the Pokemon I caught a 4-letter name. Got to Goldenrod City, and I kinda just kept playing the game. I knew I was going to do the coin case glitch, I just haven't played a ton of Johto games, and I had no clue where the coin case even was. So I just kept getting all the badges, finding a weird fish, stopping Team Rocket, and oh hey, the coin case. It's in the Goldenrod City underground, by the way. I could do the glitch now, but I made the critical mistake of starting the save file on Sunday, because at the beginning of the game I just clicked through those options to start playing faster. But the TMs for Return and Frustration can only be obtained on a Sunday, and you need Return for the glitch. Ironically, I would wait until Sunday in real life to fix the clock, and by then Bart had enough friendship for Return. Oh, and would you look at that, I beat the champion a couple days ago. I haven't even caught a legendary at this point, or even released the legendary trio, but you don't actually have to. We're going to catch them all with the power of checking my bag and knowing there's 0 coins in it. Just like when you're at the gas station and you just barely didn't have enough time on the tire filling machine for that one last tire, and you just keep rummaging through the glove compartment hoping to find a quarter, but you know you're going to have to break one of your crisp dollar bills because you have no coins. I'm not projecting, you are. To perform Pokemon modification with the coin case glitch, you are thankfully going to need far less specific Pokemon and items than for the Mew glitch. For slot 1, you'll have the Pokemon you want to change, the edit Pokemon. In slot 2, you can have any Pokemon you want. I would recommend, say, a level 2 Pidgey and teach it Fly, because you're going to need Fly a lot if you do this for multiple Pokemon. And in slot 3, we need a special Pokemon. It's called a Slide Pokemon, and it's important this Pokemon is low level with low friendship, and it's going to need specific DVs, which are similar to IVs in future generations. You might have to catch a few Pokemon in the early routes to find a good Slide Pokemon, but with my first attempt, our boy Cedo here did just fine. And in slot 4 of your party, you're going to need a Quagsire holding TM02, with Return as its first move. We'll use the Return I got from the department store, and you can find the TM02 for Headbutt in the Ilex Forest by talking to this guy. Just make sure not to use it and give it to Quagsire instead. And the only other thing you need to do is set up your boxes, because the names of the boxes become the code that we are executing. Way easier than getting 218 Carbos. And with specific box names, we'll be able to modify the first Pokemon in our party to make it shiny or even a different species. I'd recommend editing higher level Pokemon for the legendaries for reasons you'll see shortly. So I caught a bunch of extra Pokemon in Victory Road. With everything set up, we can now do the glitch. We can fly to Cherry Grove City, entering the Pokemart and saving the game. We leave the Pokemart and walk 4 steps to the right. We go to the Pokedex and listen to Bellsprout's cry. And we use the coin case, making sure to switch pockets in the bag before doing so. We back out of the bag to be spammed by text on the start menu, and we struggle to move the arrow down to the save option, as the game will only register inputs on a couple of frames. We save the game, and once it's done, we find ourselves and the people of Cherry Grove City invisible. Horrified, we reset our game, hoping to end this nightmare, and everything is back to normal. Or is it? If we've made it to this point without the game freezing or entering the glitch dimension, our Pokemon that we've edited is going to be a bit broken. The game will still say that it's the same Pokemon in the stats screen, but if we send it out into battle, we'll see that it's actually changed. But we need one more step to complete the transformation, to deposit it in the Pokemon daycare. Are we geniuses or what? Yeah, actually, you just turned my rock snake into a freaking legendary bird. This is very likely going to cost a lot of money. It's pretty common that they'll say they raised it 250 something levels, but the magic of turning something else into a legendary Pokemon I think is worth the price tag. I would repeat this process, battling the Elite Four again for extra money and changing the box 2 name to the species that I wanted, until I had all 6 legendaries of Gen 2. And now I would make them shiny. We just need to edit the boxes to the new code and do the coin case glitch again on each one of them. And boom! We now have every legendary Pokemon of Gen 2, but shiny. And for all of his hard work, I decided to make Bart shiny too, and include him in all the fun. But there's still the chance that these Pokemon would be flagged by the system for a couple of reasons. Number 1, while the species changed, the moveset stayed the same. And number 2, they're likely not going to be high enough level. The hack checks should be smart enough to know the minimum possible level that a Pokemon can be caught at, and they know certain Pokemon can't have certain moves. So to remedy this, I deleted all of the moves from the legendaries and taught them TMs or HMs. You can delete the unnecessary moves in Blackthorn City. And then there was the arduous task of getting each of them to the minimum possible level, running through the Elite Four with switch training at first, but making a bit faster progress by going to the Kanto gyms later on. This took around 8 hours just to get everyone from level 30 to around level 40. Celebi was actually the easiest one, since it appears in Crystal at level 30, I didn't have to level it up at all. But everything else needs to be level 40. That's the level of the trio and the box legendary for your game. The opposite legendary does appear in these games at level 70, but thankfully you just have to get them to level 40 because they still appear in the other game at level 40. But after those 8 hours of grinding, they were all the appropriate levels, which means it was time to transfer. There wasn't a ton of documentation on this process to know if it would even work today. There was some info, but I didn't find an up-to-date YouTube video on it or anything like that. So I was kinda nervous that one or more of these Pokemon were going to be flagged by Pokemon Home as illegitimate. I wasn't even sure that something as simple as making Bart shiny would be an issue either, but I put the transfer code to get them in Pokemon Home, and holy crap, the servers were terrible as I was doing this. I kept getting error 504, which might indicate the servers were under maintenance at the time, but eventually I was able to get into Pokemon Home and see those shiny beauties sitting in the boxes. And thankfully, the Gen 1 Pokemon didn't trigger a hack check while they had been sitting in there for a week. And I was able to greet all of our new friends in 3D for the first time. Except for Bart. Don't worry, Bart, the DLC's coming soon. One thing that was really interesting is even though it was obtained in the same method as the others, Celebi is marked as being met in a fateful encounter, while the others weren't. This tag is usually for event Pokemon, and it just assumed it was from the event, seeing as the Crystal event is the only way you would be able to get it otherwise. Something I thought was kind of neat. In a perfect world, I'd be able to shiny hunt all of these legendaries in these games the normal way. But if Pokemon Bank shuts down, getting these shinies with the Game Boy Origin will be lost to time, unless Game Freak decides to allow us to play Gen 1 to Gen 3 on the Switch. Like, come on guys, we know it's possible. And they're just kinda leaving money on the table. Us content creators, we'd spend like $150 right now to have all of the Gen 1 through 3 games on the Switch. Hopefully I do get to hunt them all in these games one day, but it's a race against the clock at this point. Being from glitches, I know a lot of you won't see these Pokemon as being legitimate, but that being said, glitch Pokemon still do have their charm to them. You're not hacking the Pokemon into the game, you're not doing anything that's outside of the game's code to produce, and you still have to invest a good amount of time getting them manually, just not quite as much as shiny hunting them legitimately. And you can't mess anything up, you also have to make sure that they're going to be able to transfer. And while glitched and hacked Pokemon are typically not transferable and are just for random fun, I personally find these glitch shiny legendaries to be a beautiful kind of loophole. But thank you guys for watching. This has been the easiest method to getting all of the Generation 1 and Generation 2 legendary shiny and transferable through Pokemon Home. What else should I get? Should we make it a series? Go Generation 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Let me know by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And shout out to the channel members for buying me some ramen each month. We do have the DLC incoming, for which I will probably go live here on YouTube for launch night to go through the story and such, followed by streaming on Twitch for our 100 shiny sandwiches in the Indigo Disc DLC video. So make sure to follow the Twitch, stop on by, and say D's nuts in the chat. Until then, I have been Trails, and I will catch you guys next time.